at 0 it is on this side, and I increase it, you see the sun is rising, and by the time it comes to 180, which is where we were, it should be on the other side over here. Yeah, very ambitious as with every other project, but again, as I said, there is a lot of restrictions in terms of 17 seconds to render an EV. I feel I've lost faith in humanity now. Because I don't have the best GPU in the world, it gives me an opportunity to work and figure out how optimization for the scene will work, and that's extremely important. The only thing that I don't like about this add-on is this operator panel here, it just vanishes the moment you do something else. Like if I just even click away, that is gone now. How do I edit this thing? Om Namah Shivaya. Good morning, welcome back to In the Khud. So this is 12th September 2023, 10:03 AM. I'm having my cup of tea. In the past 1 month, I would say my schedule has drastically changed. And not just my schedule, overall a lot of things are changing. A lot of the person is dissolving, and a lot of what is real is appearing. And I'm gonna stop there because the more I speak about it, the lesser valuable it's gonna get for me in my experience. So that's all I'm gonna talk about. Yeah, in this video we're discussing a little bit of documentation of the third environment render that I'm making. I know the first two renders weren't great, and I know that this render is also not gonna be great. The nature of this job is that I have to do multiple of these projects, and they're always on a very strong deadline, so I have 3 days for this particular video. The more I do these projects, every single time there is something more that I end up learning, and which is good and which is great. That's how life is unfolding, so I'm really embracing it at the moment. So I'm gonna stay in layout so you get an understanding of what the project looks like. What have I done here? We're basically having one large plane, which I've again done the same thing. Add a subdiv modifier to it and apply it, and then you go into the edit mode and select these edge loops in vertex select, and run the command toSphere. So toSphere. An important thing about running toSphere is that it has to work while your pivot is in individual origins. If your pivot is like 3D cursor or median point, whatever, it's gonna do some weird things. So that makes it circular, and why you want it to be circular is because when your plane is big enough and circular like this, it looks natural into the horizon. Otherwise, if it's a flat plane, there's gonna be like a distinct edge that is gonna be visible. Rendered view. This is how the render view looks. Currently, I have basically what I've done is if I want to go to my outliner. Of course, we have render collection, which has camera and light, as there's only a sunlight at the moment. If I was to turn off the sunlight, you see there is still a lot of light in the scene, which is coming from the sky texture. In the background, I've added a sky texture. If I was to go into my scene and if I make this transparent, you're going to see that the sky texture will no longer be visible in your rendered view, but it will still cast the light of the sky texture. And the sky texture is a great starting point. If I was to come in and shut my sky here, just by default, this is what sky texture is doing for you. It's giving you this, the Nishita sky texture right inside of Blender. The sun is here currently, okay, it is there. What you can do is you can make the sun size smaller. If I make this 1, if I increase this value, this is what you're getting. You can actually see the sun in the view. Sun size is, why is it in degrees? Why is the size in degrees? I'm not sure, but now you actually see the sun. If I now start to take it down, so I make it half, then you see the sun is over here. Okay, this takes a little bit of practice, where the sun exactly is, because the moment it goes there, it starts to disappear into the horizon. So if I keep it at 15 and I take the elevation up, so if I take the elevation up, it's actually setting. Let me bring it to 0 first. So at 0, it is on this side. If I go from 0 and I increase it, you see the sun is rising, and by the time it comes to 180, which is where we were, it should be on the other side over here. Yeah. Elevation, if I put it at 90, it is going to be directly above here. So that's going to be your noon time. For the starting scene, I actually wanted to be in noon because that way there's a lot more light in the scene. But I also do have a sunlight. So if I can switch this on, there's going to be a lot more light. Now in this project, what am I trying to particularly work on? Okay, before I get into the render properties, I have put a sky texture behind, which is basically just an image of the sky, clouds on it. This is because I don't want to go through the mess of making volumetric clouds. It's not worth it. It's really not worth it. I'm gonna take the sky, and eventually what I want to be able to do is just animate the sky a little bit from here to here. I'm gonna see those sort of natural clouds in the background without having to do anything about clouds. We could do it at the time of compositing right inside of After Effects, but let's keep it at that for the moment. As I said, in the last render that I made of the coconut tree, I made some very rookie mistakes, which I don't know if it's a good thing to do because that's the reason I've learned a lot of things, but definitely going forward I want to keep that in mind. And the biggest mistake I think I made in that project was not optimizing my scene. And I can understand, like, at the moment I couldn't think about optimization because there were like two big 3D projects that were clashing, and I had to somehow figure out the render and give it in, like, this time around I have 3 days in my hand and I'm gonna work a lot more on optimization. So for optimization, the first thing that I'm doing is I'm coming to, this is in cycles, okay. I said that Eevee is very good, but the thing is, for a render like this, like let's just say in my rendered view here, and for the moment I'll bring my tree instances back, which are just these bunch of orange trees. If I stay in Eevee, okay, to be honest, when you switch from cycles to Eevee, you start to see, well, it's not that different. Actually, it's not different at all, except for you don't really see the sun disk here in the sun texture. I don't see why that would be so much of a problem. But this is one thing, right? Inside cycles, because you don't see an option for GPU compute inside Eevee. So Eevee probably only uses your... but again, you see there is so much of lag, and I'm not exactly sure if this is because of the fact that I am recording, or is this supposed to be this way. But anyway, inside of Eevee, you see this is how things are looking. And of course I have to still work on covering the entire field with grass. If I have to go about like a general checklist of things, I have to make the grass field like fully covered with grass, so scatter more grass there. I have to add a little bit of wind to the grass, which is again from the Geometry Nodes beginners course by Arindal. I've gone through that course so many times. The theme of this particular video is growth. So the concept goes something like, there's gonna be a seed. Firstly there's gonna be the field, and there's gonna be grass on it. There's gonna be a seed which falls out of nowhere into the grass, and I'm gonna try and make a patch of soil somewhere on the grass like that. The seed falls over there, grows from a seed into this orange tree. Then from that orange tree part, again, as with our previous two 3D videos, there's going to be an AI segment, which is going to be happening through Stable Diffusion Deforum, transition to a lot of different trees with fruits that are ready to be harvested. And eventually I'm going to stop that AI segment at an apple tree. Okay, this is going to be interesting. For this Stable Diffusion AI part, I'm not going to add any movement to the camera. It's going to stay still. It's going to be a static frame, and things are going to change. Like that particular tree itself is going to change into different trees. Like it's like a morphing kind of thing. There's no movement happening, because towards the end of it I'm going to transition to an apple tree and somehow have that apple tree be translated over here in the tree which was originally an orange tree. If that can become that end frame of the AI video of an apple tree, and then from that part, instead of oranges, that tree is going to have apples, and we're going to try and have apple trees behind as well. From there an apple falls into the brand box. That's the video. Very ambitious as with every other project, but again, as I said, there is a lot of restrictions in terms of time basically. About rendering, I'm gonna hit render at the moment just to capture your Eevee render for a while. And one thing I'm also trying to see is render times, because I said last time render was a big problem. So render times is my absolute big concern at the moment. This is one thing which also I've noticed is when you use a Geometry Nodes setup, it works far better inside of cycles as compared to inside Eevee. So you see, this took 17 seconds to render in Eevee. I feel I've lost faith in humanity now. 17 seconds to render inside Eevee. What are you talking about? Bro, what are you talking about? I'm not sure why it's taking so long to render in Eevee. Is it that Geometry Nodes and Eevee don't go together well? Because I've seen that obviously when you have a Geometry Nodes based scene, it really struggles in like solid view and in material preview. Again, it's taking 17 minutes. This is disastrous. I'm going to switch to slot 1 and I'm going to switch to cycles. I'm really getting the feeling that my Blender is going to crash at some point in this video. And I'm rendering this inside of cycles at only 28 samples, which is again part of your optimization for render. It's something I want to discuss. And lo and behold, cycles is taking lesser time as compared to Eevee. Eevee is taking 17 and it's not giving me any lighting information or anything. One thing is good that these leaves are reflecting light in Eevee as well. But if I go to slot 1, shouldn't these be covered with leaves a lot more? Like this particular tree has no leaves on it. Why is that the case? How do you make that happen? Firstly, the thing is maximum samples in viewport. I am going to take this down to like 16, because in viewport you can even take this down to 8, because you want to work on your movability more than how it is looking in the viewport. In the render, I've put the samples at 28, which works. You don't have to go for 64 samples every single time. Light paths, these are important, but they do play a big role in how much time it's taking for render. Simplify tab has viewport is like maximum subdivision 2, texture limit 128. This is just because you want to be able to easily navigate through the viewport. Camera culling. So camera culling and distance culling is something I've enabled for each of the objects, like most of the objects inside of the scene, and it's very less, like 0.001. so anything which is outside of the camera, even like 0.001, and at the distance of 0.001 outside of the camera should not get rendered. But the only problem is, like, I don't quite see how camera culling works, because ideally if these trees would just vanish in my rendered view, then I could understand visually that camera culling is doing this particular thing for me, but they don't vanish. Also, one more thing I want to do is, for this particular project, I'm not doing any fancy camera moves or transitions. So with that thing in mind, I'm going to try and make everything in the scene, because when the camera is moving, especially doing like 360 rotations or up and down kind of movement, then there's a lot more things you need to add into your scene to make it look like a realistic world, because the camera is seeing a lot more things. But if the camera is stationary and just like a little bit of movement here and there, then you can get away with modeling or putting together just the part which is in the frame at the moment. One big thing that I want to experiment with this time around is to render out collections once these animations are done. So I'm going to try and put all these trees into one collection. If I put the tree instances off, right, for instance, I'll stay here in the solid view. Put the tree instances off, and now I hit render. The last time it took 15 seconds, this time it took only 6 seconds. So what this means is, especially things which are not interacting with each other, like the trees in the background, they're not gonna actually interact with each other. So you can render them out as a separate pass almost, and then composite it inside After Effects. That's something that I want to work on. The thing that I want to really emphasize here is that because I don't have the best GPU in the world, it gives me an opportunity to work and figure out how optimization for the scene will work, and that's extremely important. Because if you, right off the bat, if you have something that just renders out any unoptimized scene in lesser time, then you don't understand optimization. And at a bigger scale, like a bigger project, optimization, as far as I can estimate, optimization will play a more important role than anything else in the scene. Because it doesn't matter how much you know about 3D, if you can't really render your stuff out and your turnaround is like extremely slow, it's not gonna work. Nobody's gonna care. How is this new GeoNodes thing set up? So let me go to my GeoNodes workspace here. So this is a plane here. Again, very simple displacement happening on the plane. We've added, basically, to the group input of the plane, we've added a set position, and to set position we are adding a noise texture. We subtracted by 0.5 because I'm not sure exactly what that was, but you do this because it gets thrown offset to some different place, and this multiply is just going to control how much of the displacement is there. Like if I increase this, you're going to see your plane is going to start to look like mountains. If you want to be having let me think about it. Isn't that a good thing? We'll keep it relatively low at the moment, and we plug everything through a scale, and we're scaling up to the normal. This is the right way of doing it. to the set position. Now scatter grass is basically distribute points on faces with instance on points. Instances is grass, base is a collection. Again, grass is something I've downloaded from Sketchfab. Named attribute grass, this is basically a vertex group on this plane, and if I could show it to you, let me switch off geometry nodes. If I go into the edit mode and with this vertex group called grass, if I say select, you're gonna say these are the faces which are selected. So these are the faces which are selected. I feel I have to add a little more geometry here maybe because it's not quite working, but these are the faces selected. So this grass named attribute, only here the scattering is happening, because if I try to scatter it throughout the plane, I will never be able to render even a single frame. Yeah, what is all this? Okay, the instances. So let me switch this back on. Again, I'm not quite sure why it is coming till here. That's how you scatter grass, and then I've transformed this geometry because I want to move it a little behind to the camera and everything. I'm gonna show you how to make a tree very simply inside of Blender using an add-on which is inside Blender called sapling add curve sapling tree gen. You want to enable this add-on, and I think it's by default in the inside Blender. So I'm gonna come in here, stay in the solid view. If we say shift A curve, this is in curve sapling tree gen. And the only thing that I don't like about this add-on is this operator panel here, it just vanishes the moment you do something else. Like if I just even click away, that is gone now. How do I edit this thing? So you have to delete it and then again come in here and then curve sampling, then you get this. I don't know why Blender. Let me be able to change it, right? So the easiest way to go about working with this is come into here preset, and just you can come and change individual things about the tree. It's gonna take a long time, so come into preset and take Japanese maple. That's what I've taken here, and then you can come in here and change all of the branch radius, branch splitting, branch growth. This is one very interesting thing that I saw, especially for the effect that I'm trying to go for. But again, because this panel only just goes away somehow, I don't quite know. And you should not press undo, because if you press undo, it's not changing that value. It's just like going putting everything in the bin for some reason. So I have a lot of concerns with the way this add-on is working, but anyway, so it's a good add-on, like very helpful for making trees especially. And you can change this, you can make the length variation. It's like a geometry nodes structure, but Blender has given it to you almost to use, except for the weirdity of not being able to change things whenever you want to. So that's how that is working. For leaves, you come in here and show leaves. Okay, so that's gonna automatically add leaves to your tree, and you can come and add more. So if I make this 500, it's gonna be a lot more leaves here. And the good thing about this add-on is it makes another thing called leaves here, right? So this leaves is actually a separate mesh. So what I did for scattering those oranges over there is I took the leaves thing and I added a new geometry nodes group to it, and over here you want to come in and distribute points on faces. Okay, so you automatically get these points which are like it's good enough. Come in and make the density here lesser, or like even 1, and that naturally does what I want. And then instead you put instance on points and then add the orange tree. That's it for day 1. I'm gonna work on this project the whole day today, tomorrow and day after, and I'm gonna correspondingly even document that. So thanks so much for being in the code. I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.